Hello, we continue our conversation about the ecumenical councils in plain language, and today I will be talking about the Sixth Ecumenical Council. Monophysitism that was addressed by the faith of Chalcedon, by the definition of Chalcedon in 451, remained a topical issue until the end of the 7th century, because non-Greek speaking regions of the empire like Armenia, Egypt, Syria, they were affected by this traditionalism, by suspicion toward Chalcedon, that people believe that in Chalcedon somehow St. Cyril of Alexandria expression about one nature was compromised. So Emperor Justinian, as we talked last time, put a value of empire very high, and to preserve this understanding of two important components of reality, which was the church and the empire, he needed to win over his population. But no way they would sign up for Chalcedon, so he would try to, imperial authorities, they tried to go around this, coming up, rewrapping Chalcedon, rewrapping this definition about full divine nature and full human nature in one person of the Son of God, in a language that would be accessible for those people who were scandalized. And we're talking about like millions of people. So Saint Justinian and Theodora, they died childless, and after number of changes, right, stability came in the person of Emperor Heraclius. So we are talking right now about the first half of the 7th century. So Heraclius, he had a close friend who was a Syrian by origin, and his name was Patriarch Sergius. So Patriarch Sergius decided to use kind of dark corner of this theological discussion where no one looked into, and he started to talk about energies, about activities of Christ, and hoping that this would make a reconciliation possible. So he was talking about two activities, two energies that belong to divine nature and to human nature, but at the same time he would say it's impossible to speak that the whole hypostasis, the whole person of Christ had also two activities. So he wanted to say there was one activity. And even Pope Honorius of Rome, who considered himself a trained theologian, he bought into this. And it looked on the surface very sensible, but in reality it was a slippery slope toward monophysitism. And as often with compromise for monophysites, it was not enough, and they wanted Heraclius to reject Chalcedon. So Emperor Heraclius, he became the big winner, toppling down Persian Empire, and that's something that no one could achieve for centuries, but it was just happened to have a short respite to deal with very unexpected dangers of Islamic invasion from the south of the border, which was kind of really guarded because all concerns were about Persians, and now from the south, from the people whom snobbish Byzantines treated as filthy camel drivers, as a very organized, very skillful army came over. So Heraclius suffered very humiliating defeat at the river Yarmouk in 639 in Palestine. So now he had to deal with new set of problems. His monophilitism, because the name monos one and philema wheel was relatively successful. So I was talking about energies, but then monophilitism is something that produce energy, if produce activity. So if I would like to grab a cup of tea, I need to have this intention in my head. I need to have will for this. So, and monophilites, they would argue that there is one will, one philema in the person of Son of God, and that what actually moves things, right? So no one really objected to this. So there was impression some of the patriarchal sees were vacant, and there was impression that everyone on board with this new theology, and there were relatively successful inclusion in the Byzantine Church based on this new theology. So the first alarm came from monks in Palestine in the person of monk Sophronius, who later became Patriarch of Jerusalem, who realized that there is potential for heresy in this. And he wanted to reject this, but then it was already part of the imperial policy. And what is now even more complicated, that emperor since Justinian was treated as a sacred figure, as a figure who could be in charge of the church. Okay, it became very amplified in Russia, but in Byzantium, that's roots of this philosophy, political philosophy, in Byzantium. So at this time, it was already time of taking over Jerusalem by Arabs, losing Damascus to Arabs, and also for people who found themselves on territories cut out from the empire. This Justinian imperial philosophy didn't work any longer. So they wanted to foster new identity, like Patriarch Sophronius. This monk Sophronius became Patriarch of Jerusalem, and this identity would be like basically international in Russian, but like basically international fellowship of self-minded Orthodox people across the borders. So it would be people under Arabic rule and would be people under imperial rule, but they would speak the same language of Orthodoxy. So that's a new reality, because for people like St. John of Damascus, whose father negotiated peaceful surrender of Damascus to, I believe it was Caliph Amar who took it over. So this imperial loyalty didn't really play much, didn't have much significance. So that was the first group. And of course, very famous in all this, St. Maximus the Confessor. And he was silent during this initial pressure, initial onslaught of monophilitism. And then in the second half of this period, in the middle of 7th century, he rose his voice, speaking against documents which would prohibit Orthodox to express their faith, because empire didn't really want to suppress Orthodox who would disagree with this. What the court wanted, that those who disagree with monophilitism and this official policy would stop attacking this. That's what they wanted. And St. Maximus, he could not agree with this. There were two documents in the 7th century, ekphesis, like disposition of the face, and typos, like symbol of the face. So, and Saint Maximus would refer to the steeples as for him was litmus test. If you recognize the steeples, which prohibits to speak about two energies in two natures, and rejects this notion of one single will, then you are not Orthodox. So Saint Maximus, he was from the cream of the cream Byzantine society, as many churchmen. He was an advisor, secretary to Emperor Heraclius. He wanted to become a monk, and that's what he did. But also he was philosophically, theologically trained. So there is this famous disputation between Kyrus and him in Carthage, where many refugees found themselves from Egypt, from Syria, running from Arabic invasion. And then Pope of Rome Martin, in around 654, he assembled a very impressive council at the Lateran Basilica in Rome, attended by 500 bishops. Byzantium was still had its own capital in Italy, in Ravenna, where you can see this famous Saint Vitalis Basilica. And Pope Martin was kidnapped out of Rome, sent to Constantinople, was very brutally treated. He was an old man, suffered from, he was bedridden. Nevertheless, he was humiliated, deprived of basic needs, like they didn't let him to wash, to have a bath, and so on. And at the end, he was sent into exile to Crimea. That's where he died. But also he refused to be in communion with the official church. So everything changed with enthronement of Constantine Poganat, which means birdie. He had he sported after one military campaign a bear, and also with losing Egypt to Arabs, because this contingent of people after whom initially imperial authorities went was already out of reach to Byzantines. So it didn't really matter that much. So in 681, the Sixth Ecumenical Council took place. Pope Honorius, who wrongly endorsed this monophyletic teaching, was excommunicated. It was a deeper definition of the faith of Chalcedon, that Christ, he has full volition according to divinity, and full volition according to humanity, minus sin, right? That's kind of definition. And monophylletism was rejected. It was a good council, good input from imperial authority, no pressure. Churchmen could speak. If probably they would decide that monophylletism was right, they wouldn't really hinder into this. And that's the end of the 7th century. Thank you very much for your attention.